Back to another video, and what I want to talk about today is whether Newcastle are in the mud. Now, it seems that when their ownership took over, the current ownership, obviously PIF, a Saudi company, took over in October 2021 from Mike Ashley. Massive hype around it, especially from Newcastle fans, because first Saudi really. Obviously, the UAE has interferences in Manchester City, but the first Saudi interference in the Premier League, let's say, for Newcastle. And obviously, this was super, super exciting for Newcastle fans. They thought, yes, finally, the tough times under Mike Ashley are over. Money's going to be pumped into the club. It's going to bring success. And we've seen that so far in the 18 months, that has definitely been the case. It's been incredible, their rise. But today, evidence has come out in a US court that claims that the chairman, Yasser Al-Rumayyan, is actually part of the Saudi government. Now, why that is such a big problem is because when the deal was originally made, legally binding assurances were made to the Premier League that the Saudi government would have no control over the club. And this is something that Sheikh Mansour and his consortium had to do when they were looking into buying Manchester City, and it's something that I'm sure the Qataris will have to do for Manchester United, as the Premier League do not want states running clubs, just because it makes it harder to get them to adhere to, rules, policies, regulations within the league itself. So the Premier League were fundamentally clear on this, and the PIF, the consortium that took over Newcastle, legally binding assurances, as it says here, were clear that he would have no control, that the Saudi government would have no control. US court case has come out today that is investigating the LIV golf competition, the new Super League of Golf, which is again another Saudi Arabian tournament, that has been in court, and it's shown that the Newcastle chairman is actually a sitting member of government with sovereign protection. Now, what that means is that he basically cannot be, unless he is the graveman of the case, so, a major part to it, he cannot be pulled in front of the court for questioning or to stand witness, which is fair enough. And to be honest, they're investigating an LIV golf competition. I don't know why he would be. So basically means they have no way of questioning it. Why this is such a problem is because since they've taken over, the ownership have come under fire, obviously, about the human rights abuses that go on in Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to talk about that. You can go and look at that for yourselves. But yeah, there's been a huge amount of that coming from other clubs, coming from other sports, coming from around the world, as to why the Premier League has allowed that into the competition. And it's the same with Manchester City, and I have no doubt it will be the same with Manchester United if the Qataris complete that takeover. The Premier League has declined to comment. Although what is interesting is that the chief executive, Richard Masters, did say in November 2021 in an interview after the takeover took place that if evidence did come out to find out that the Saudi government were involved in somehow running the club, which by having the chairman as a sitting member of government would be, the Premier League has ways of removing the consortium as the owners of Newcastle. Now, there are two things that are wrong with this. One is that the Premier League need clearly to tighten up on their ownership, tests. I'm not really sure how to say it. The original takeover by the PIF actually failed in July 2020 as the result of an unforeseeably long process before the deals arrived, and eventually got completed in October 2021. Basically, there were loads of concerns about what this would bring to the Premier League, the image it would give the Premier League. Eventually, that was all scrapped, and the deal obviously got done. But with Qataris now looking to buy in, and we're seeing the impact that Saudi Arabia, Qataris, UAE are having on sport. Obviously, they have a load of cricket matches in the UAE. Qatar just hosted a FIFA World Cup. They're looking to buy Manchester United, possibly the biggest football brand in the world. The UAE... a sheikh in the UAE owns Manchester City. Saudi Arabia owns Manchester United. A Saudi Arabian consortium. I need to be careful with my words here. Saudi Arabian consortium owns Newcastle United. let's not forget one of the possibly, if not the world's biggest sporting star, plays in Saudi Arabia, Cristiano Ronaldo. There's huge clamour for Messi to go and play there. A lot more attention is coming from the Middle East in terms of sport. Saudi Arabia are looking to host the 2030 World Cup. This is the takeover is definitely again part of their efforts to put the Middle East on the map in terms of a sporting thing. You think the World Cup, cricket takes place there a lot. As I say, Saudi Arabia want the 2030 World Cup. Qatar are looking at an Olympic bid. It's all part of the same thing. The second problem this holds is what are Newcastle going to do? Because if the owners are found guilty and the Premier League do retract the ownership, that leaves the club ownerless. And that has its own consequences, as the Premier League will need. Obviously, each club at the start of each season has to pay to compete in the league. Yes, they earn their place there, but again, they have to pay a small subsidy to the Premier League to make sure that they can compete. And also, the Premier League needs to see the financial records to make sure the club is being run smoothly. If a club doesn't have an owner, then they're not obviously going to be able to do that. But also, what does this mean for Newcastle? Players won't be getting paid, staff won't be getting paid, background staff won't be getting paid, no transfers. And obviously, we know that Newcastle are currently on this massive building form. They've done incredibly well this season. They set 5th in the league, level on points with Tottenham with 2 games in hand. They got to a Carabao Cup final, lost to Manchester United in a game that they arguably could have won. They played so well. They're on the up, they really are, and there'll be Champions League football next season for them, hopefully. Who knows, Premier League title pushes in the next few years. We'll see what happens, but this would be catastrophic for their building project. And it would also be interesting to see who comes in. I'm not sure who would come in because, yes, the Premier League could strip the consortium of the club, but someone still has to pay that money to the Premier League to be able to buy the club, and I'm not sure who would do that. Maybe whoever failed in the Manchester United bid, maybe Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe. I doubt that. I think they'll be the ones to get Manchester United, but maybe the Qataris then come in. But if this was to happen, then I think that raises serious questions about the Qatari takeover of Manchester United as to whether that will actually go through. Whatever happens, this is set to be a really, really interesting story. It's going to drag on for a while, I really do think. So make sure you keep an eye on it because it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, Newcastle fans especially, let me know what your thoughts are. But yeah, Newcastle could be in serious trouble here.